Welcome into the Tech Ed Podcast. I am your host, Matt Kirkner. Do you want to know how to get an entire organization energized around the future? I've been around education, I've been around manufacturing, I've been around nonprofits, and I will tell you unequivocally that the number one way to get everybody excited about the future is to expand the organization. That expansion can take a lot of forms. We can expand geographically, we can expand in products, we can expand in the reach of our mission, we can expand in terms of physical space in our facilities. All of those ways are ways that we can energize our organizations around the future. And we're talking today with somebody who is doing exactly that. I had the opportunity to visit this individual's institution earlier this year. I was blown away by the scale at which they are expanding. And once I met this guest, I said, we have got to have her on the Tech Ed podcast to tell the world of technical education about all the great things that are going on at Lake Area Technical College in Watertown, South Dakota. It is such a pleasure to welcome to the Tech Ed podcast the president of that institution, Tiffany Sanderson. Tiffany, such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah, we had such a fun conversation when I visited your campus not too long ago. I got to learn a little bit about your background, and it was really fascinating to me. We hear people come to higher education, especially higher education leadership, from a lot of different ways. You have a really, really unique path to the role that you're in now. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, I thought that I was going to grow up and be an agriculture teacher and work in a high school in South Dakota and help students grow an appreciation for the biology of plants and animals. And life takes its twists and turns. And I've learned over time that my gift and my passion is about helping to grow people to do their very best work in the world. And so the seeds were planted around that ag theme, but it's really turned into how do I help people do their very best work in life. And so spent some time in the nonprofit world. I worked for the National FFA organization in Indianapolis and helped a startup education company based out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and did some consulting work in the for-profit world, and accidentally found my way to the public sector working in South Dakota state government at the Department of Education. And that's really where I figured out that technical education broadly, agriculture and every other facet of industry, whether that's in transportation or healthcare or a variety of other areas, is really what I love to do. So I got to spend time in career and technical education and workforce development, and that all snowballed together into policy work and finance. I spent some time working in the governor's office, and most recently was the Secretary of Education in South Dakota. And there was an opportunity about a year ago, a little over a year ago, to come to Watertown, South Dakota to lead Lake Area Technical College. And I tell people this is the Disney World of technical colleges. It is the best place to be to do the work that we do in partnership with industry.
And I can tell you from my experience being there, it is Disney World indeed. I mean, just so many different programs, such an energetic staff. And I like the fact that you began that last answer by talking about your gifts. One of the things we talk about a lot is that, everybody's got their gifts, everybody's got things that they're naturally good at. I always go back to the movie Good Will Hunting, and there's a moment where Will Hunting, who's the protagonist in that movie, talks about, if he looks at a piano, he sees black and white keys, but in certain areas like math and organic chemistry, he could always just play. I'm a big believer that if we find those areas where we can just play, where we're naturally good, where we have gifts and that we can put to work for the betterment of an organization, that's where we're going to see, first of all, the most job satisfaction individually, and second of all, be able to do the most good because the work that we're doing is naturally aligned with the energy that we have and our interests and so on. So glad to hear that through a really impressive career, by the way, leading all the way to Secretary of Education in your home state and now to leading the institution, Lake Area Technical College, a really impressive career journey. And here you are in South Dakota. As you know, I love your state. Probably not a whole lot of America has necessarily visited South Dakota, but I get there once or twice a year. I have family in the eastern part of your state. I've traveled from Sioux Falls on one end to Rapid City and Terry Peak on the other end. And it's just a really beautiful state. What should our listeners know about South Dakota as we start out here?
Yeah, and you described it so well, Matt. It's the land of infinite variety from the plains and farm ground to the Black Hills. I love the people of South Dakota for so many reasons, but when you think about neighbors who take care of one another, doesn't matter what part of the state you're in, that is the culture. South Dakotans take care of one another and look out for one another and build the best that they possibly can together. And you can see so many beautiful landscapes. I've had a chance to travel in many parts of the world. And there is no place like home, truly, to explore the outdoors. I grew up on a ranch in the northwest part of the state, and it's pretty amazing to have a late night ride on horseback and to see the stars with no light pollution. So it's really hard to beat that, or a hike in the Black Hills. I love the people, I love the place, but I really love the spirit of South Dakota in that people are hardy, they are resilient. It took a lot of guts to homestead in the Dakotas, and that spirit has been born through generations here, where people just are going to figure out how to do the hard stuff and enjoy the people around them while they do it. And I love that.
That's amazing in some ways how easy we have it compared to how difficult they had it. The world has changed tremendously in 150 years, but when you travel through a state like South Dakota, one thing that hasn't changed, and you touched on it, is just the genuineness of the people. Not a lot of pretensions, fairly humble type of people that live there in South Dakota, but really focused on the future, really focused on growth. It's been interesting over the 25 years or so that I've been visiting South Dakota to see how it's changed. And most of my time is in the southeast part, the eastern part of your state, Sioux Falls, and in the surrounding area, which I think for most of the last 10 or 20 years has been one of the fastest growing regions in our entire country. Usually it's ranked in the top five or so, Lincoln County especially. So it's been fascinating to watch that growth. Tell us about the growth. What's driving all of this growth in the state of South Dakota?
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. In the last 10 years leading up to 2020, about 9% growth. We're projected for 7% growth in this decade as a population. And it's largely an older population. The state demographer has said that by the end of this decade, 20% of our population or more will be senior citizen status. And so we're certainly in a time of growth, but we're also in a time of demographic shift. And so that's an interesting challenge as we think about policy and education and workforce development. And so appreciate the many minds that are around trying to figure out how do we best address our state's needs. But driving that change, that growth, apart from demographics, I think people really recognize what a great place South Dakota is. It's a low tax, low regulation environment. And people are drawn to that, in addition to, as we've already talked about, fantastic people and great opportunity in small communities and large communities alike. You can live in a town of 1,300 people in South Dakota that doesn't have a stoplight and be connected to the rest of the world and work remotely. And that's a pretty good option for many people. And so there's just a lot of attractiveness to what South Dakota has to offer, both from community perspective, from a work perspective, and a lifestyle perspective.
Really is incredible world that we're living in. You couple that with the growth that you've already talked about, changing demographics, certainly 20% of your population being retirement age in the near future, lots and lots of moving pieces, especially when it comes to workforce. So with all of these things that are changing, and from your perspective, both as a college president and at the state government level, what are some of the challenges that that growth and those changes present from a workforce standpoint? And then what do we do about making sure that we're preparing the workforce of the future?
Yeah, man, I wish there were a simple answer to that, Matt, but it's a really complicated business, right? I've spent my whole career around career and technical education and workforce development, and we haven't got it figured out yet. And I'll work the rest of my career and we still won't have it figured out, but hopefully we'll make some progress on it. But I think that there's a numbers issue, right? There are tons of opportunities and not enough bodies to fill all those spots in the workforce. There's also a mismatch around skills, that the skills that those who are looking for work have might not match up entirely with the jobs and positions that are open. So there's this constantly shifting puzzle that I love being a part of, where employers are saying, this is what we need, and 5 years from now, here's what we'll need. And there are people saying, I have interest in this area, and at the tech college level and within the K-12 system, within career and technical education, our job is to help bridge those two pieces and hopefully better align the skills that those looking for work have with the needs that our employers have that serve our communities here in South Dakota and serve communities worldwide.
And again, with all of these moving pieces, you mentioned the fact that in many cases, We have employers that can't find enough people. That certainly isn't a challenge that's unique to South Dakota. We hear that all over the country. We have young people and people of all ages that may be making a move in terms of their career, that are interested in gaining new skills and finding a new career and finding that match, first of all, between needs and skills. And second of all, kind of going back to the conversation we had a little bit earlier, where are people's natural gifts and what are they naturally drawn to, and making sure that we can put them on the career pathways that they're going to find most rewarding over time. I know that Lake Area Technical College is really committed to all of those things that we just discussed, to making sure that we're aligning the values and the capabilities and the concentrations of the workforce with the needs of the employers, making sure that we're aligning people with really rewarding career opportunities over time. So tell our audience a little bit about Lake Area Technical College and all the great things that are going on there and what they should know about the institution.
Lake Area Technical College is a 2-year technical college. We're one of 4 in South Dakota, but truly our mission is about serving South Dakota's workforce at its core. When we think about what do we do for students, it's about providing superior, comprehensive technical education that changes lives and launches careers. And I just love sharing our mission with people because it's 3 different components that just really motivate all of us here on campus to do our very best for students. We have them for 1 or 2 years. And in that time, we're hoping that we can change their trajectory in life so that they can find, to your point, careers that are fulfilling personally to them, that help them earn good wages and help them succeed in whatever definition that looks like in their life. I think one of the pieces that makes us unique is the way that we define our success. And that is that it's not just our success measurement to say our students have graduated, that we prepared them to leave our institution. If we did that, we're doing a disservice to the industry partners that we have. We're doing a disservice to our students. We are fully measuring ourselves on, are we helping our students not just graduate, but go on to get great careers, to help them succeed in the marketplace and help our industry partners to fulfill the workforce needs that they have. So just as an example, in 2022, our graduates left our doors, went out into the world. 6 months after graduation, 99% of them, and this isn't just 22 graduates, 99% has been our placement number for at least 5 years prior to that. But 99% of those graduates went on in 6 months to a career, to continue their education, or to serve in the armed forces. And not just any career. The average graduate in their very first job out of college earned almost $50,000 a year. That was the average. Top end was well over $70,000. And so I credit that to really motivated students who have been taught well by our faculty here. And our faculty are listening closely to our industry partners who are saying, these are the skills, this is the knowledge, this is the experience that we need coming in our front doors.
I love the way that you're looking at measuring, what I call KPIs. It's really determining what's important. And yeah, we talk to a lot of folks and they'll talk about graduation rates, or they'll talk about, how quickly students got through programs. Those things are important, of course, but really, to your point, looking 6 months out and even further and saying, all right, it's great that you have this certificate. It's great that you have this degree, but what have you done with it? And then you talk about making $50,000 to $70,000 a year, and that's literally like you can be making that 2 years out of high school in some cases if you transferred some credits, maybe even quicker than that. And I will also tell you, we have listeners all over the world and certainly all over the United States of America. $50,000 to $70,000 goes a long way here in the Midwest. I mean, that is a lot of money, and so credit to the incredible work that you're doing. I have to tell our audience, when we visited, and it was a chance introduction by a friend of mine, Brooks Jacobson, who's an instructor in a number of your programs. He and I work on a national organization, the American Technical Education Association. We're both on that national board. That's how I got to know Brooks. I was heading through South Dakota and I said, hey, I want to stop in and say hello. We're walking, right across the front door of your office. And lo and behold, you were either walking in or walking out. He said, let me introduce you to the president. And it was just a chance meeting. Literally 5 minutes later, I had a hard hat on and we were walking with one of your operations leaders into this huge expansion that you have going on at Lake Area Tech. And I had a good, probably 45-minute tour of one of the more significant expansion projects that I think I've seen. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that expansion, the programs that are being affected, how your campus is being transformed, and so on.
We're at a very interesting, special point in our institution's history with this expansion. In the course of this year, we will add 16% more campus onto our campus. That's a tremendous expansion, and it will set us up in great ways to meet some of our big goals for the next 7 years. We left 2023 with the goal of increasing our graduate production by 23%. So notice I didn't say we want to increase our enrollments. While certainly that would be great, we want to serve as many people as are interested in receiving technical education here. But we're really focused on what's our output, not just how many come in our doors, but how many are going out into the world and building great lives and serving employers well, or starting their own business. So this expansion project that you mentioned is really a critical component of that. The facility that you walked through, we're calling the Archway, and the Archway will be host to some of our general education classes, but it'll be our new home for our business program, our financial services program, and you mentioned Brooks a little bit ago. It'll also be home to our advanced manufacturing, robotics, electronics, and automation programs, including a 3D printer farm that has so many amazing things happening on a daily basis, but really seeing the intersection between how machining and welding and energy and automation all come together in a space, so that our students just don't know one end of the manufacturing business, but they really understand that engagement across all of those disciplines so that they're well prepared for today and tomorrow's manufacturing employment opportunities. The most key part of this is all of this is being done at no burden to our students. There is zero debt being taken on. So between private investors and the state and special funding through our foundation, we've been able to bring all of these new facilities online, more opportunities for students at zero cost to their bottom line.
Absolutely. And at a time when there's such a huge focus on the cost of higher education, you think about the changes in funding, you think about the changes in financial aid, that, those are all top of mind with everybody these days. And then the changes in terms of tax policy and the changes in terms of demographics. I mean, there's a lot of things that are moving. So just so our audience is listening to this, and hearing the message. I mean, it's one thing to say we want to grow graduates by 20 to 25%, but we're doing that at a time when there are a lot of moving pieces in higher education. So credit to you for taking on, maybe a little bit of calculated risk, but also having that vision to see what the future of the institution can be and then driving toward that future. So tell us a little bit about the visioning part of this. I know a lot of folks, if they're maybe new to higher education or new to a big building expansion project, it's really exciting, but it's a little unnerving too. I mean, I've chaired large construction projects, and you're making that decision on the front end about, are we going to do it? If we build it, are they going to come? What else is important along with just building out the physical space? How did you get to this point where you are now, Tiffany, in terms of thinking through what the future should be and then actually putting the shovel in the ground and starting the project?
I have to give a ton of credit for those that came before me in terms of the shovel in the ground and saying, yep, it's the right time to do this project. I came to Lake Area Tech in January of 2023. And prior to me, there were several presidents who were just phenomenal human beings and made great decisions to build this legacy of Lake Area Tech. Deb Shepard and Mike Cartney, just fantastic leaders. In fact, the two of them together gained the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence at Lake Area Technical College in 2017. And so that recognition was kudos for decades of great work and is certainly helping us set the stage for this next phase as well. But in terms of where do we go from here and why do we take the calculated risk that we do? We day to day are talking to employers who are saying to the start of our conversation, I don't have enough people in these skilled professions that pay really well, produce great, fulfilling lifestyles. And we've got students, whether they're traditionally aged just out of high school or folks who are saying, I've always wanted to be X, and now's my chance to go back and do that. We're in the values proposition business, right? We are here to help capitalize on opportunity for several different groups of people, and we just help bring them together and provide them skills training an opportunity for careers that helps them in their path and their journey. So as long as we're listening to our audience and really in tune to what the needs are, we can create those opportunities pretty readily. You talked about higher education and cost affordability within higher education. So often we're hearing about that conversation in the context of what's the price tag to go? How much debt am I going to carry out of that experience? And that's certainly a part of what we need to consider, but it's so much more than that. So kind of the view that we take at Lake Area Tech is, what's that front end price tag? Is that accessible for the students who are interested in the types of careers that we can help them get to? That's one element. What's the debt that they'll carry? 20% of our students are on full ride scholarships. 1 out of every 5 students on our campus, full ride scholarship, no debt after college. The average graduate last year was able to earn back the cost of their education in 14 months. 14 months. That is quick turn, right? So it's not just about that front end, but it's about what's the return right after graduation. And then earlier we were talking about not just at 6 months, but 5 years, 10 years down the road. What is the value of that degree or certificate or diploma that students are earning with us? And those wage premiums, those opportunities to move up in the workforce because of the training they received here are just tremendous. And so we really are keeping our eye to, as we look to the future, how do we create the best opportunities for both our employers and our students?
Well, and I think another thing that sometimes gets lost when we kind of compare and assume that, a 4-year or an advanced degree and compare that apples to apples with perhaps a certificate or an associate degree is that you're getting out of school 2 4 years sooner if you're going on that associate degree pathway. And so what a perfect opportunity. You get 2 more earning years as well. So not only are you retiring that debt much more quickly, you have less debt likely, and you're getting into the workforce sooner. That's a benefit to employer and student. And so the model just works so well. And the more time I spend around our nation's technical and community colleges, the more that message just resonates. And not that it's the right answer for everybody, but it's certainly one that needs to be on the radar of every single high school student and every single incumbent worker, anybody who's looking at moving into a new career pathway, because it's really an efficient way to gain new skills, gain new competencies, and add value not just to yourself, but also to your community. None of this happens without the financial resources to do it. And you touched on this a little bit earlier. First of all, no increase in debt, no increase in tuition. The students are not going to bear the burden, for lack of a better term, of this huge expansion. They'll certainly endure the benefit of it, but financially, they're not going to be impacted. That impact is going to fall on the state, and it's falling on. And I love the fact that you used this word, and it wasn't lost on me when you said it. Private investors, and you didn't call them donors. You called them private investors. Tell us about those private investors and those private partnerships that you're making that has helped make this expansion possible.
We have so many partners who walk right alongside of us and bring our students up in their learning experiences. I'm so grateful for them in so many ways. But our business is one built on relationships. And a lot of that comes down to what is it that our product is, meaning what do our students know? What can they do? How can they use that in industry? And that requires us to see and experience industry partners' operations to understand what their day-to-day is and what their expectations are. It requires us to be really vulnerable. It's really easy in education to say, well, we do these things in our classrooms and our labs. If you like what that is, great. If you don't, maybe we're not your people. And we just don't have that approach. Today's world moves so fast, way too quick for us to sit back and say, this is what we do. We have to constantly be saying with industry, and every one of our 31 programs has advisory committees. What is it that you need? What's the latest equipment? What's the latest practice? What's the latest train of thought? How does that then translate into our classrooms and our students' experience? And that constant conversation provides opportunity for us to understand their needs and for them to see how can we create that experience that we just talked about on the campus for students. And that's what results in investments. We have within the heavy equipment operator industry and diesel, tons of in-kind contributions through zero cost or low cost leases that help us operate very expensive programs in reasonable ways. We have private donors who say, we love the work that you're doing. It's really important for our state or for our industry. How can we help you? And so it's not our goal to set out every day and just raise a ton of money. It is our goal to walk alongside of our partners and make sure that we are serving their interests and their needs while we do the work that we do. And that's how big buildings can be built and fantastic equipment can be put into our lab spaces year after year.
One of my favorite leaders in the world of higher education has a phrase, and I fell in love with it. He says, when you're building partnerships, when you're finding investors, he says, if you ask for money, you'll get advice, and if you ask for advice, you'll get money. And the whole idea is that, if we listen first, and if we say, what are your needs, what are you looking for in terms of future employees, future growth, how can we support you and help you get where you want to be. And that's really what an investment is, right? Somebody will invest in an institution in the same way they'll invest in a financial investment. And that is, if there's a return in the future, it doesn't necessarily have to be an economic return. There's lots of returns that come out of higher education. But when people are inspired in that way, that is when they become benevolent. That is when they start to understand that, hey, this is about more than just giving money to an institution. This is about creating a better community. This is about creating a better state of South Dakota. This is investing in our future students and our future workforce. And that's really when the magic happens in higher education. And so I love the way that you characterize that. Plenty and plenty of very philanthropic organizations in your state of South Dakota. Not enough time to mention all of them as much as we would love to. But one that I want to focus on, and it's a name that I hear all over your state. And for people who haven't spent time in South Dakota, the Sanford name, it feels like it's on everything. You're in a sports arena, you're in a hospital, you're in education. That family has been just so incredibly benevolent. And I know they've been hugely supportive of the work that you're doing. So tell us about the partnership that your college has with the Sanford family and with their foundation.
Yeah, I think I'll speak, Matt, broadly to the tech college system in South Dakota, because it's not just like Area Tech that Mr. Sanford and his organizations have helped to support, but the entire technical college system in South Dakota. So I'm going to back us up to November of 2013. I was at that time working in the Department of Education. I was the Career and Technical Education State Director for South Dakota. And I got a call from the governor's office, and the message was, hey, if we were to start a new scholarship program and you had $50 million, what would you name it? And how would it work? How would it produce more workforce in South Dakota? I'm in my early 30s, and $50 million had never been part of my life before. And so that was the call that entered me into the conversation on what would become the Build Dakota Scholarship. Mr. Sanford had approached, at that time, Governor Dugard, to say, we want to build South Dakota's workforce. At that time, even, there were employers saying, we can't find enough welders, we can't find enough construction workers, we can't find enough nurses. How can we address that need? And so Mr. Sanford came forward alongside of one of his organizational leaders at First Premier Bank, Dana Dykehouse, who is an absolute wonderful human being. I can't say enough good about Dana. And said, we'll put 25 million in. Governor Dugard, could the state put 25 million in to start this scholarship? And that was the beginning of the Build Dakota Scholarship. It was the fastest project in state government that I was ever a part of. I told you that call came in November. We had our first board meeting in December, and applications for scholarships started in January. We're now at year 10, and there are 3,500 individuals in
Wow.
South Dakota who received a full ride scholarship in a high demand, high wage industry to get a start or a new start within their careers. Life changing. That scholarship was just groundbreaking, and other states have tried to replicate it. And it's just a fantastic way to approach workforce development. And you talk about investors, not just in an institution and not in one student, but into an entire state over time. We just met last week for the next round of 10-year planning for the Build Dakota Scholarship, and that scholarship's not going anywhere. It's going to grow from here. In fact, there were $10 million worth of scholarships awarded this last year, and almost 90% of those scholarships came with an industry partner, meaning the scholarship funds were matched by industry partners. So mom and pop shop in a 2,000 population town are able to say, I need to get a new employee 2 years from now. I'm going to invest in this student and they're going to come back to me and work for 3 years at a minimum through this scholarship. So that's just one example of the investment Mr. Sanford has made. Another is the building that you had a chance to walk through. It'll be named after Dana J. Dykehouse for his investment and belief in Lake Area Tech and our students.
It's just a great story. And I love the fact that the whole discussion around the investment in the, $50 million Build Dakota Scholarship Program started with a question of, if you had this, what would you do with it? It's not, here's the money, go find a purpose for it. It's, look, if you can tell a story big enough, if you have a message and a vision big enough, we're willing to invest in that message. And I think it's really, it's a good message for all educators. And that is that, and we tell them a lot of times, people come to us and ask the question, well, how do I get a budget to be able to do something? And my answer is always, make the something so big that nobody can say no to it. If the dream is big enough and the benefit is big enough, people will find a way to support it. And that's my advice to educators. You've been walking the walk. You're right in the mix of it. If you had advice to offer other educators on how they build these kind of relationships, Tiffany, what would you tell them?
Yeah, tell student stories and allow students to tell their stories. If you walk through our halls and say, hey, what brought you to Lake Area Tech? It's incredible, the paths and the journeys that students have brought with them. Everything from, I know that I want to own my own welding business, so I started dual credits as a junior, and I'm now in the business program after I completed my welding degree while I was still in high school, and I'm going to own my own business and move back home. To, I went and I got a 4-year degree and got into the field and realized that I wanted to level up in my career and wasn't interested in a master's program, so I chose to come here for 2 years and get a specialty within what I started as a 4-year program. Huge variety, right? From 16-year-olds on campus to folks mid-career saying, I want to level up and try something new. Whether you're a middle school teacher or you're working in higher ed or anywhere in between, that partnership piece is really about what's the end result and how do we tell that story? And to your point, create a vision for the future that helps people meet their needs, right? We're just here to make connections and get people what they want and try to clear out the extra stuff. And if we can keep the focus on that, everything else comes together pretty easily.
You're exactly right. I mean, everybody's reaching for their wallets when they hear these amazing stories of these students whose lives have been totally changed by their opportunity at a technical college, at a community college. So telling those student stories, really, really important. That's one piece of advice. We have two more advice questions for Tiffany Sanderson before we wrap up our time here on the Tech Ed podcast. The next one is, we talked about earlier this incredible population boom that you're seeing, certainly in certain regions of your state, but across your state, tremendous population growth in the last 10 years that's projected to continue. So for people in our audience who are living that right now in an area that's experiencing a significant boom in their population, how would you advise them in terms of some of the challenges they might expect and then what to do about those?
Well, that sounds like it could be a multi-chapter book, but we'll try to have a quick conversation about it, right? So there's a balance. Dream big, vision big, get momentum built around that idea, get people together to move forward. It is our goal to operate every day as the premier technical college in the country. And I don't say that to be arrogant. I say that to be, we want to serve our students and our industry partners so well that this is the premier place to get technical education. So we want to build a product that, to your point from earlier, that people can't say no to. That it is only, yes, this is the place for me, whether that's a student looking to enroll here or an industry partner who is saying, I need to find somebody who can help train the technicians that I need, the skilled professionals that I need. That's the place I want to do it. And so part of responding to growth is just be the very, very best at whatever it is you do. Don't try to be too many things to too many people, but really define and be focused about what it is you do and just do it exceptionally well. And the balance of that is 10 years from now, we might not be in a growth phase. So how do we build our work in a way that 10 years from now, myself or whoever's in this seat doesn't have to go to the legislature and say, hey, we need to get bailed out, but that we're expanding and we're operating in a way that we can flex with whatever comes our way.
I love the way that you're thinking that. You're thinking that way as a taxpayer myself, and certainly always more than willing to support educational initiatives in my hometown, across my state, and across the United States. You do want to make sure that we're not getting so far out over our skis that we don't have the ability to scale one way or the other, because we have to be dynamic in this changing world of demographics and this changing world of technology. It's a world that's changed a lot, not just in the last 5 years, but even in the last, several decades. And I want us to go back a few decades with you now, Tiffany. And I'm going to ask you a question we love asking here on the Tech Ed podcast. And I want you to go back to when you're that 15-year-old girl, sophomore in high school, all of the successes ahead of you. Maybe you knew you were going to be president of a college. Maybe you knew you were going to be secretary of education. Maybe not. I'm not going to ask you to tell us one way or the other. But knowing that you had this incredible life ahead of you, if you had one opportunity to go back in time and give that 15-year-old one piece of advice, what would it be?
One of them is don't get rid of your wardrobe. It'll come back in style when you're 40.
Love it.
I now own jeans that I'm pretty sure that I bought when I was 15 as well. But at 15 years old, sophomore in high school, I was a really shy, reserved individual. I grew up and graduated from a high school that was 98 miles from a stoplight. I had a chance, some really incredible experiences, thanks to my family and educators, to go and see parts of the country and expand my horizons, certainly. But I knew so little at that point. And I started with what I knew or I could put my arms around. And that was being really specific about the things that I wanted to accomplish. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I grew into or have evolved to understand is that it's not specific things to accomplish, but it's about this journey and this pursuit that is just relentless, that we always need to get better. We always need to improve. And that's both for ourselves and the people that are around us. It took me a long time to really figure out what my mission in life is. And part of that was working with really good people. But I just want to do good in the world. I want to serve those around me and serve the purposes that are before me. And I can do that through technical education. Others might find other paths that are the same kind of magic for them in their personal lives. But to my 15-year-old self, it's really about pursue wildly all of the things that stretch you and make you uncomfortable. Watch people around you in a way that you pick up the way they think about things, the way that they have conversations, the way that they draw people in, bring people together around great ideas. I've picked up so much over time from the people I've had a chance to experience and be around. And so if we could bottle that up and just give it to sophomores all over the country, I feel like we'd have a lot of young people who are ready to go in life.
Stay focused on what's in front of you and what's important to you, but open yourself up to all of these different influences that young people and really everybody has around them day in and day out. They're hiding in places we don't expect them, and just being open to those opportunities, being open to how others might be trying to help us, and then being the beneficiary of that help. And if we do that, to your point, we do good in the world, we do good for those around us. Interesting how well your mission personally aligns with our mission here at the Tech Ed Podcast, which is to secure the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. Nobody is doing that better than Lake Area Tech. I want to thank you, Tiffany Sanderson, the president of Lake Area Technical College, for being with us today on the Tech Ed Podcast. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Great having all of you on board with us again this week at the Tech Ed Podcast. Really enjoyed my conversation with Tiffany Sanderson, the president of Lake Area Tech in Watertown, South Dakota. Wow, if there was one theme that absolutely echoed through this entire episode, it was this idea of not just expansion. That's where we started. And obviously they're expanding their organization. They're expanding in terms of space, in terms of reach, in terms of students, but also the importance of dreaming big, going all the way back to the advice that President Sanderson would give to her 15-year-old self, talking about, if we're going to do this, let's do it in a really big way. And I can't thank her enough for telling that story here on the Tech Ed Podcast. Speaking of doing things in a really big way, we do our show notes every single week in a really big way. All kinds of conversations we had today about partnerships, about programs, about the institution itself at Lake Area Tech. We will link all of that up in our show notes every single week. We want to have you visit the Tech Ed Podcast website. This week, it will be techedpodcast.com/Sanderson, where you will find all kinds of great references to all of the content in this week's episode. When you're done with that, head on over to social media every single week we remind you that we are active on TikTok, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram. Anywhere you consume your social media, we are there. Stop over and say hi. We will say hi to you again next week on the Tech Ed Podcast. Until then, this is Matt Kirkner, your host.